This is a special breaking news edition of Baseball Today for Monday, February 5th. That is my man, Trevor Plouffe. I am Chris Rose, producer Dan along for the ride yet again is, I guess, Let's Play 2, because one of our big topics on the earlier show was rumors that Bobby Witt would sign an extension. That has now become official, and look at that dough. $288.7 million, according to Jeff Passan of ESPN, for the next 11 years. It could get up to 14 years and $377.7 million. It also includes opt-outs after years 7, 8, 9, and 10. Trevor Plouffe, I asked you earlier today, what number would you accept if you were Bobby Witt during these negotiations? And I got to tell you, you were pretty much right on this thing.
Yeah, we talked about 8 years, 220 is my starting point. That was like 27.5 million. This one comes out to 26 and a quarter, something like that. So the AAV was there. I knew that they wanted to have a certain amount of time that was guaranteed to them. The crazy thing is, Chris, like I'm just thinking about this now. It's an 11-year contract. He'll still be what, 34 years old when this thing is done? Like that's a joke, right? Am I doing math right?
Yeah, I mean, he turns 24 later this summer.
So, I mean, this is awesome. I'm happy. The opt outs are an interesting thing to me. After the 7th year, 7, 8, 9, that's pretty interesting. So they know they're going to keep him through his age 31 season. And look, this guy deserves everything. We talked so much about this earlier on. About him being the face of that franchise and how they need that right now. And where they're going to have this guy at the helm, I think this is a really proud day for the Kansas City Royals.
So we talked about his improvement from year 1 to year 2, and I thought it was substantial. He raised his OPS right around 90 points. He went from, a guy that was a 20-20 guy to a guy that was nearly a 30-50 guy. He finished one stolen base shy of 50 steals for the year. I would like to see him get his stolen base percentage up, but that's something he can work on. I don't know where he ends up. Is he going to be a shortstop full-time? Is he going to be a third baseman full-time? I don't know where he ends up, but I tell you, this is something that the Royals needed as much as Bobby Witt. And listen, $277.7 million, $288.7 million. Sorry, I don't want to shortchange you. $11 million. My bad, Bobby, on that. Is great for the player. This is really important for a franchise, which handed out a nice long-term deal to Salvador Perez, but that's after they gypped him on the first deal, which was like 5 years, $7 million, whatever it was. And then they finally gave him some big boy money. But they never came to a long-term deal with Mike Moustakas. They never came to a long-term deal with Eric Hosmer, guys who helped rebuild this organization, all grew up together, got them to back-to-back World Series, and eventually helped them kiss the ring in 2015. Now the fans have a jersey that they can get with a name sewn into the back instead of just Velcroed to the back. And that is as important as anything here.
Oh, 100%. And look, I'm looking at this as from the team's perspective. Sure, that off-field stuff is good. It's great for the franchise. We all know that. But on the field, too, this guy's got all the tools that you can imagine. And even if you go on his Savant page and there is a couple blue numbers, the chase rate, like the walk percentage, like the on-base percentage is going to get better as he sees more major league pitching, as he gets more at bats. So those areas, like that's just look at the history of hitters. That's going to improve. And he already has all the other things, the sprint speed. We know about that. I think he's going to come into his own defense. If he wants to stay at shortstop, I think he has the body and the ability to stay there as long as possible. If he wants to bulk up and start hitting some nukes and move over to third base, 100% he can handle that. So this is a guy that can kind of do it all, man. I think that they know that homegrown, like this is their guy, and they trust in him. And look, has that blown up in other franchises' faces before? Like, sure, but I think for most of the time, when you give money like this, like, and you're sure as a franchise, I think it's worked out.
Well, there haven't been that many deals that have been given to guys that are 25 or younger, not this substantial, right? I mean, Mike Trout didn't even get his until I think he was 27. Bryce Harper had to go all the way to free agency to get his. Same with Manny Machado. They still got them at very early ages, maybe 26 even. But when we're talking about 25 and younger, the only guys that come to mind for me, excuse me, are Stanton, who got his at $325 million. And the Marlins really needed to do that because at the time he was only 2 years away from free agency. Julio Rodriguez got his. Fernando Tatis Jr. got his. And now Bobby Witt has gotten his. When we're talking about numbers that are this astronomical. And you know what? I asked it on the earlier show whether or not you thought the Padres, whether they regret giving him that type of money with the way it's played out between the injury, the motorcycle accident, the surgeries, and the PED suspension. And you and I think, are both kind of in the same wavelength here. No, because he's so young, because he's turned into one of the best defensive right fielders, and because it feels like there's more to give with him, I don't think that they regret it. And I think that this is the way more and more teams should be. They got to take risks with guys that are 23 years old. I sure as hell would rather do that rather than pay a guy who's 30 years old 8 years and $220 million.
You know who I'm like super stoked for right now, and this is on the personal level, and I think it's going to happen. I don't know anything about this, but just in my mind. Yes.
Can I guess? Royce?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very similar situations, draft pedigree, excelled in, at the big league level, have all the tools. I was at Twins Fest. They announced the entire team. Royce Lewis was the last one they announced, the only one with pyrotechnics. It was wild. They're grooming this guy to be that. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, I think that there's a bunch of guys that you need to look at that way. I think Adley Rutschman is certainly a guy that comes to mind. His teammate, Gunnar Henderson, who's just coming off.
They have some decisions there, don't they?
They do. But I do think that I know it sounds nuts to say that it's smart business when you're giving up almost $290 million to a guy who has had one really good, I would call it a good year. I wouldn't call it great what he had last year. Is that fair?
Oh, I think it was a great year. I think it was a great year. And I think, like I said, the areas that he was deficient in, those are going to come with time. So
I think so.
Yeah. And you mentioned like those other deals, the jury's still out on, well, I mean, no, like Julio looks great. Stanton, people want to say that was a bad deal. It accomplished everything that it was supposed to accomplish. And guess what? This guy could end up being in the Hall of Fame. So like, let's all relax on him. Fernando Tatis, we talked about, the kids love him. He has plenty of time. He's when you're one of the best players in the world, like elite top gun status in the league, you can do some silly stuff off the field and be forgiven.
I kind of like what the Royals have done this offseason. They've added a couple of veteran pitchers in Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha. We know that obviously they're going to win the World Series because they signed the pitcher, Will Smith, who has won 3 in a row with 3 different teams. So obviously he's going to win this one. I think it's good. I think it's really good what their ownership group has done here is because they have fallen in recent years miles and miles behind the other professional sports team in town. And I'm talking about the one that's going to be playing out in Las Vegas on Sunday. So they've got their dude in Patrick Mahomes, who, oh, by the way, is an owner in the Kansas City Royals organization. And now the Royals have their face moving forward. I just think it's smart on a lot of levels.
I do too. And you know what? Royals fans are awesome. And I think this about a lot of Midwest teams. Like, they're ride or die. Like, they're going to support you. But when you actually give them something to support, they are raucous. Mm-hmm. Like, this is when we went in there, when they were in the World Series, winning the World Series, those crowds were as big as any in the big leagues, man. Like, and they were fun. Like, that's a good atmosphere. So I'm happy for this fan base because they always are there to support when you give them something to support. And guess what? That's what this is.
Now, ultimately, are the Royals any better right now than they were 3 hours ago when Bobby Witt Jr. was just a league minimum guy? No, they are not. But what it does is it restores some faith in the organization. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to go out and sign Jordan Montgomery tomorrow or Blake Snell and spend, 9 figures on another free agent. But what it does is it shows to the fan base, it shows to the rest of Major League Baseball that we're serious, that we're not just going to nickel and dime our way through this thing. And by the way, there is now responsibility on Bobby Witt Jr. to live up to this contract. He needs to do that. And it's even more glaring when a team like the Royals do it. It puts more pressure on a guy. Like the Yankees, I hate to use this example, but it's abundantly clear to me. Jacoby Ellsbury, they got virtually nothing out of him. Most teams cannot have a $140 million mistake on their accounting slip. The Yankees can. The Dodgers can. There's a couple other organizations that can. The Kansas City Royals cannot. So this needs to work.
Yeah, you know what? This is the thing, though. Like, with stuff like this, they want the franchise to work and look like Bobby Witt Jr. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've identified that he's a leader. He's essentially going to become the CEO of that team. Like, he's going to be the face of the franchise. The way he works, the way he acts, the way he treats people, the way he goes about his business, they want others to follow that. So they have identified in him that this is the direction they want to go. So, like, yes, does he have to go out there and freaking kill it on the baseball field? Of course. But, like, there's other aspects to this too. Like, this guy, they've identified as he is going to lead our organization. And I think that's really cool, especially to see that in a 23-year-old kid. He's special.
Yeah, but to me, it's very much like, even though there's not a cap in baseball, it's like when you pay your quarterback in the NFL. Your quarterback, if you pay him $50 million, he better play like a $50 million quarterback. He can't play like a $30 million quarterback because he's going to cost your team elsewhere. Bobby Witt Jr. has got to play exactly commensurate to what he does. He has to.
I understand that, but Chris, $26.25 million doesn't hamstring your payroll, like the quarterback does, because there's a cap.
Yes.
That's not the same thing in here.
No,
$26.25 million by the time he's going to make it, 5 years down the road is going to be like a 1 year, kind of bounce back player salary.
Well, it might not be. Well, I don't know about that.
Do you know what I mean? I maybe not that much, but you know what I mean. Like this.
But it's a sliding
this
scale.
This is not hamstring the organization whatsoever.
But it might hamstring the Kansas City Royals organization. Let's say they want to make their payroll $140 million, okay? Which they're not close to having right now.
Okay.
But let's say in a couple of years they want $140 million, and he's eating up.
Don't do that math.
1/6 of that? That's a lot, as opposed to the Dodgers, where it's not nearly as big.
Or well, that's on the front office to go make smart moves, lock up other players at, quote unquote discount. Like this is the game, man. Like this is good for the Royals.
It is good for the Royals. What I'm saying is that if he doesn't play up to his level, then the fan base, which is super excited today, will say, "Oh man."
I think he has enough of a floor. I think that's the type of player you give this deal to. Like the floor is there.
I agree 100%. Yeah. I agree 100%. All right. Anything else? I guess one other thing. So these deals, 11 for 288.7, and then the next one for 377.7 if it goes to 14 years, and he is number 7. Do we have to get to the bottom of why number 7 is so important to him?
I think we know. Doesn't he wear number 7?
Yeah, but why it's so important?
Because 7's an awesome number.
Okay.
It's one of the baller numbers, like 7's like a elite number.
And I'll leave you with this, unless you have anything else to get in here?
No, I think we did. I think we covered it, man.
His dad, a pitcher, played 16 years in the show. What do you think his total earnings was? 16 years.
Can you give me the years he played? I know. Late 80s?
Came up in the late 80s.
$5 million.
What the hell? What is the matter with you? He came up in the late 80s and he played 16 years.
I don't know. They weren't making a lot of money back then.
$1 billion.
$7 million.
Oh, my God. I'm going to have to take you back to some sort of finance class.
It's a long time ago.
21.6.
Oh, that's a lot at that time.
Well, but it's at that time. This isn't the Stone Ages. It's still the 80s. Remember, Nolan Ryan was the first guy to ever get $1 million in a season, and that was like 1980 or whatever. So,
okay.
We were making.
I wasn't familiar with your game, Bobby Witt Sr. Sorry.
We were making some money back in the day.
I mean, I didn't mean to insult the guy. Jeez, I was pumping him up.
You want to know what my first full-time job was?
In Reno?
Well, actually, before that, I was a weekend sports producer in Cincinnati, Ohio. You want to know
Tell
how much
me.
I made? Take a guess how much I made for a year.
Now I'm scared to guess. 35,000.
$12,500. But because I worked so much overtime that year, I think I made 17.
And now look at you, balling.
Up to 21 grand and pushing. All right. We appreciate everybody joining us for the live breaking news edition. This is what we do when there's big stuff that happens in the world of baseball. We happened last week with Corbin Burns. It's going to happen this week with Bobby Witt Jr., Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, Cody Bellinger. You're in the on deck circle. We will drop what we're doing. Plouffe was obviously buying a new coat. Where's that coat from?
This is my winter coat. I don't know. I just put it on. I had to go out and run errands. I was getting a prescription. People had dropped it and said, let's go. Let's run it. I care about the fans.
This is how we roll. For our one-of-a-kind producer, Dan Rourke, and the uber puffy jacket and talented, soon-to-be surgically repaired Trevor Plouffe. I am Chris Rose. We will see you who knows when here on Baseball Today.